You're listening to the Make It Simple podcast, where timeless stories come to life. Today, we uncover the untold story of Prince Siddhartha's great renunciation, a journey of courage, sacrifice, and awakening. Settle in, open your heart, and let the story speak to you deeply.
Imagine having everything. I mean, literally everything. Palaces, servants, any luxury you could possibly want. Now imagine choosing to just walk away from it all. Why? Why would someone do that? Today we're doing a deep dive into the really extraordinary early life of Prince Siddhartha, the man who became the Buddha. We'll get into his surprising background, his royal life, and those key moments that led him to, renounce the world.
Yeah, and for this, we're drawing directly from ancient Buddhist texts, commentaries, trying to piece together the story behind the story, It's not just about the facts. We want to explore the motivations, the context for this huge spiritual shift. Our mission really is to uncover those foundational moments right from his pretty unique birth up to the insights that push him towards enlightenment.
Okay, let's dive in. So the story kicks off in a place called Jambudvipa. That's the old name for the Indian subcontinent, right? What was it actually like back then?
Right, Jambudvipa. They called it the land of the jambu fruit trees. It was this huge, incredibly rich area south of the Himalayas. Think modern India, Nepal, bits of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, all encompassed. And because it was so geographically diverse, you had this massive prosperity. Not just money, but culture, religion, everything was flourishing. And it was kind of split in two, geographically speaking. You had the middle country, the Majjhimajanapada, that was the powerhouse, politics, economics, learning, big cities like Varanasi, Rajagaha. Then there were the border regions, Pakantajanapada, more remote, maybe less developed culturally speaking.
Okay, so a really vibrant, varied place. What about the people who lived there, and how was society structured?
Well, broadly speaking, you had two main ethnic groups shaping society. First, the Aryans, or Aryaka. Fairer-skinned, taller, they'd migrated from Central Asia, and they brought a lot with them: the advanced Vedic culture, Brahmanism, their language, and crucially, the caste system. Then you had the Dravidians, the Malacca, darker-skinned, the original inhabitants who were gradually pushed south. And that caste system, it was incredibly rigid, stratified. You had Brahmins as priests at the top, then Kshayas, warriors and rulers. Below them, Vaishyas, the merchants, and Shudras, the laborers. Brahmins had the highest, let's say, spiritual honor, but the Kshatriyas, they held the real political power.
That sounds incredibly strict, that caste system. Was there any wiggle room at all, or was your path basically set from birth? And how did that feed into the spiritual thinking of the time?
You were pretty much locked in, yeah. Birth determined a huge amount. And maybe partly because of that rigidity, you had this explosion of different spiritual ideas. I mean, 62 different philosophical views on everything: life, death, the universe. You had nihilism, the idea that death is just the end, full stop. You had complex ideas about karma carrying on. And you also had tapa self-mortification. This was big in Brahmanism, the belief that, intense suffering could purify you, lead to liberation.
Wow. So, okay, in a world with 62 different philosophies and practices like extreme self-denial, what makes someone think, nope, I need something completely new?
Exactly. That's the core question, isn't it? And it leads us right to Siddhartha's own lineage. Because he wasn't just anyone. He came from these two powerful royal clans, the Sakya and the Kolya. And their origins are, they're quite something. Okay, so the Sakya clan. Siddhartha's father's side. The story starts with a king, Okakaraj. His chief queen died, and he promised his new queen her son would be king. This meant his 9 older kids, princes and princesses, got exiled. They ended up in a forest full of saka, teak trees near the Himalayas. A hermit there, Kapila, told them to build a city, and they did Kapilavastu. Now here's the bit that always stands out. To keep their Kshatriya bloodline pure, they intermarried. Brothers married sisters. Except for the eldest sister, she was treated like a mother figure.
Wow, okay, that's intense.
It is. And when King Okakaraj heard how capable they were building this city and everything, he apparently exclaimed Sakya, meaning capable or excellent. So that became their name, the Sakya clan. And they took on the Gautama Gotra, the lineage name the Buddha later used. Politically, they were under the bigger Kosala kingdom, but they kind of governed themselves. A sort of council of elders system, unity based on righteousness. That's why Siddhartha's father, Suddhodana, is called Sakyaraja, head of the republic, basically not Maharaja, like an absolute king.
So it's not just royalty, it's this whole narrative of being capable, self-sufficient, maybe even a bit unconventional with the intermarriage, all to preserve this pure lineage. What does that tell us about the values Siddhartha would have grown up with?
Exactly. It shows this deep value placed on lineage, purity, the Kshatriya ideal. He was born into a world where tradition and noble birth were, everything, which makes his later rejection of it all even more powerful. Now, the Koliya clan, his mother's side. This story is, if anything, even more wild. It involves a Sakya princess, Pia, and King Rama of Varanasi. Both had leprosy, met in the forest, and cured themselves by eating some special roots. And then, get this, they had 16 pairs of twin sons, 32 kids. These sons built a city by clearing kola trees, so they called it Kolanakon. It was also known as Payakakbatnakon, City on the Tiger's Path. Later it became Devadaha, Pond of Kings.
16 pairs of twins, that's mythological almost.
It really sounds like it, doesn't it? But the key takeaway is the deep connection. The Sakaya and Kolya clans intermarried for generations, which leads us to King Suddhodana, a Sakya, marrying Queen Suramahamaya Kolya, Siddhartha's parents. So his lineage was just steeped in this idea of dignity, pure bloodlines, high principles, quite the setup.
Okay, the stage is definitely set. Powerful lineage, rich cultural backdrop. Let's get to the moment it all begins. The birth of Prince Siddhartha, which, as you hinted, wasn't exactly a normal event.
Not at all. So the texts say that before this life, the Bodhisattva, the being who would become Buddha, was chilling in the Tusita heaven. And he did these 5 great observations, Mahavilokana. Basically checking the time was right, the continent, the country, the family. Even his mother's lifespan had to be suitable. Only then did he choose to be reborn. So after 10 months, Queen Suramahamaya felt she should go back to her family home in Devada for the birth. King Suddhodana arranged this huge grand procession for her. And on the full moon day of Visakha, that's around May-June for us in 623 BC, they stopped to rest in Lumbini Garden. It was this beautiful grove of salad trees halfway between the two cities, and that's where she went into labor.
In a garden.
Yeah.
Not a palace.
In the garden. And the birth itself was, miraculous. He emerged perfectly clean, unstained. 4 great Brahmas, divine beings, caught him in a golden net. Then 2 streams of water, one hot, one cold, apparently showered down from the sky to bathe both him and his mother. And then immediately, right after being born, the baby Bodhisattva stood up, took 7 steps, looked in all directions, and on that 7th step, he made this incredible declaration, the Asabhavaja. I am the foremost in the world. I am the greatest in the world. I am the most excellent in the world. This is my last birth. There is now no more renewed existence.
Wow, okay. Talking newborn taking 7 steps, that's definitely setting a high bar.
Right. It's showing his exceptional nature right from the absolute beginning. And interestingly, on that very same day, 7 other significant beings or things also came into existence.
After an entrance like that, you'd almost expect his childhood to be filled with more signs and wonders. And sounds like it was. What was life like for this clearly special prince?
It really was. So 5 days after the birth, this sage named Asita visited. He was an old family friend, apparently a master meditator, and when they presented the baby's feet somehow ended up resting on Asita's head, a sign of great reverence. Asita was overjoyed, recognizing the baby's potential, but then he started crying. He explained he saw the baby would become the Buddha, but he wouldn't live long enough to hear the teachings. He'd be reborn in a formless realm, too subtle to benefit directly.
That's quite a prophecy, isn't it? Amazing potential, but also this sort of bittersweet shadow cast over it immediately. Does that prophecy almost feel like it removes some of his free will? Or is that just how we might see it now?
That's a really sharp question. I think the texts present it more as destiny unfolding, but a destiny that still requires immense personal effort and choice from Siddhartha himself. It sets the stage, yeah, but doesn't negate his journey. Then came the naming ceremony. They invited 108 Brahmins. 7 of them looked at the signs and said, okay, 2 paths. He'll either be a Chakravartin, a universal emperor ruling the world, or he'll renounce everything and become a fully enlightened Buddha. But the youngest Brahmin, Kandana Manap, he was certain. He said, no, just one path. He will definitely become a Buddha, nothing else. So they named him Siddhartha. It means he who achieves his aim or accomplished one. Very fitting,
A name that's basically a spoiler alert for his entire life.
Pretty much. And those Brahmins told their own sons, 5 of whom would later become his first disciples, the Panchavagi, to keep an eye on the prince and follow him if he chose that path. But then, tragedy struck. Just 7 days after Siddhartha's birth, his mother, Queen Suramahamaya, passed away. She was reborn, the texts say, in the Tusita heaven. So Siddhartha was raised by his aunt, his mother's sister, Mahapajapati Gotami. She also became King Suddhodana's main wife. She clearly loved him deeply.
So his father, King Suddhodana, hears this prophecy, emperor or Buddha. And obviously he wants the emperor option, right? So he tries to, bubble wrap his son's life.
That's a good way to put it. He was terrified of the Buddha part of the prophecy. He wanted his son to rule. So he went to incredible lengths to shield Siddhartha from anything that might trigger renunciation. Specifically, the 4 signs. He was determined the prince would never see an old person, a sick person, a dead body, or a wandering ascetic. He tried to create a perfect, unchanging world around him.
Does that kind of intense protection almost backfire in the stories? Does it make the eventual encounter with those things more impactful?
Oh, absolutely. The narrative really suggests that by creating this perfect bubble, Suddhodana made the eventual confrontation with reality, with suffering, even more shattering for Siddhartha. He had zero context for it. But even before that, there were hints of his inner nature. There's this story about the Vapamunkal ceremony, the royal plowing festival. While everyone else, his attendants included, were caught up in the celebrations, young Siddhartha was left sitting under a rose apple tree. And completely spontaneously, on his own, he just slipped into the first chana, this deep state of meditative absorption. Clear mind, total stillness, just innate.
Wow, as a kid, without being taught.
Exactly. And the texts add this detail. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadow of his tree miraculously stayed put, keeping him shaded. His father saw this, saw his young son meditating so profoundly, and a parent will bow down to him for the second time, recognizing something extraordinary. As Siddhartha grew older, his life was just pure luxury, engineered for pleasure. 3 different ponds, blue, red, white lotuses, the absolute finest silk clothes from Kasi, always shaded by a white parasol. He mastered apparently 18 different arts and sciences with his teacher, Visvamitra, supposedly even surpassing him. At 16, he married his cousin, Princess Yasodhara, also known as Pimpa, from the Kolya clan. And he had 3 palaces built for him, one for the hot season, one for the cold, one for the rains. Just surrounded by comfort, music, reportedly 40,000 dancing women. You have to picture it. A life literally like a god living among celestial nymphs, every whim catered for.
It sounds completely unreal. But he wasn't just some pampered prince, was he? I remember something about him having to prove himself.
Right. Despite all the luxury, some relatives apparently muttered that maybe he was getting soft, Doubted his martial skills, his kshatriya credentials, so Siddhartha basically put on an archery display, performed 12 incredible, almost superhuman feats with a bow, completely silencing everyone. So he had it all. The brains, the skills, the looks, the wealth, the loving family, the perfect package. And yet, something wasn't right for him.
So what gives? He has this perfect protected life, he's proven his abilities, but clearly something profound starts to shift inside him. What actually pushed him towards the great renunciation?
It really comes down to the 4 signs. Despite his father's best efforts, Siddhartha eventually did encounter them on chariot rides outside the palace walls. First, an old man, frail and bent. Then, a desperately sick person. Then, a funeral procession with a corpse. And finally, a calm, serene ascetic, a monk who seemed completely at peace despite having nothing. Some traditions say these were devas, gods in disguise, making sure he saw these things. But whether literal or symbolic, these encounters just shattered his worldview. They forced him to see the reality of aging, sickness, and death, suffering that his father had tried so hard to hide.
And that was the catalyst, seeing those 4 things.
That was the huge catalyst, yes. But there was another layer, too. Around this time, news came that his wife, Yasodhara, had given birth to their son, Rahula. Now, you'd expect joy, right? But Siddhartha's reaction was famously, a fetter has arisen, a bond has arisen. Rahula means fetter or bond. It shows this incredibly deep insight he was developing that even the things we love most, like family, can tie us to the cycle of suffering if we're seeking ultimate freedom.
Wow, calling your newborn son a fetter. That's a pretty radical perspective.
It is, and he reflected on this deeply. We have his own words recorded later, things like, I, who am subject to birth, aging, illness, death, sorrow, why do I keep seeking things that are also subject to all that? He saw the flaw, seeking happiness in things that are inherently impermanent and ultimately unsatisfactory. So he resolved to seek the opposite, nirvana, the unborn, unaging, unailing, deathless, sorrowless, undefiled state. It wasn't running away. It was running towards a profound truth. Then came the night itself. The Mahabhinikama, the great renunciation. The descriptions are so vivid. He looked into the chamber where his musicians and dancing women were sleeping. But instead of beauty, he saw them sprawled out, drooling, looking disheveled. And in his mind, the beautiful palace suddenly looked like a cemetery filled with soulless bodies. A charnel ground. That was the final trigger. He thought, tonight is the time.
Such a powerful image shift from palace to cemetery.
Isn't it? So he called for Channa, his loyal charioteer, and his horse, Kanthaka. But before leaving, he went to see Yasodhara and baby Rahula, sleeping peacefully. He desperately wanted to hold his son one last time, but he resisted. He was afraid he'd wake Yasodhara, and she'd try to stop him. It would become an obstacle. So he just stood there, made a silent vow, I'll come back for you after I find the truth, and turn away. That resolve, it's incredible.
Leaving his wife and newborn son without even saying goodbye. The sheer conviction that must have taken.
Absolutely. And as he rode out of the city gates with Channa, Mara the tempter figure, the embodiment of worldly attachment, appeared. Mara offered him a deal. Wait just 7 days and you'll become a universal emperor, rule the whole world. But Siddhartha just shut him down, said his only goal was Buddhahood. It's interesting, Mara can be seen as this external demon, or maybe just the internal pull of all the power and pleasure he was leaving behind.
Right, the ultimate temptation at the very last moment.
Exactly. They rode on until they reached the Anoma River. Anoma means not inferior or illustrious, so it was seen as a good omen. And there he did it. Took his sword, cut off his long royal hair and beard, leaving just short curls that supposedly wound clockwise. He swapped his fine silks for the simple saffron robes of an ascetic, maybe given by a Brahma in disguise, according to some texts. Total transformation. He then told Channa to take the horse Kanthaka and the royal ornaments back to the palace. Channa begged to stay. Kanthaka apparently even died of a broken heart later, but Siddhartha insisted they return. He had to go on alone.
Cutting off his hair, changing clothes, it's such a symbolic act of severing ties completely.
Completely. He spent 7 days meditating in a nearby mango grove, Anupya, letting the reality sink in. Then he set off on foot for Rajagaha. The texts say he walked 30 yojanas, a really significant distance, maybe hundreds of miles in just 1 day, an extraordinary feat. He chose Rajagaha because it was a known center for spiritual seekers. He knew famous teachers like Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta were there, and he wanted to learn from them. Now, it's worth just quickly mentioning there are actually 2 slightly different accounts of the departure in the early text. One is this secret middle-of-the-night escape we've described. The other suggests his parents knew that it was this tearful, open farewell. But honestly, regardless of those specific details, the fundamental truth is the same. Prince Siddhartha, age 29, wealthy, powerful, loved, gave it all up. He walked away from the palace to find an end to suffering.
What an absolutely incredible story.
Right.
We've gone from this, almost divinely orchestrated birth through a childhood of unimaginable luxury and protection to this profound crisis of meaning sparked by seeing basic human suffering and in this incredibly determined act of renunciation. It's just quite a journey we've covered already.
It really is. And looking back at that early life, you see how all those pieces, the lineage, the luxury, the prophecies, the protection, even the heartbreak, they all kind of converge, don't they? Setting the stage for who he would become. And this whole story, the Great Renunciation, it leaves us with a pretty potent question, I think. What are the fetters in our own lives? The attachments, maybe to stuff, maybe relationships, maybe just our comfort zones that hold us back from seeking our own deeper truths, whatever they might be.
That's a powerful thought. What holds us back? And what would it take for us, like Siddhartha, to have the courage to actually cut those ties if we felt we needed to pursue something, more profound?
Exactly. It's something worth reflecting on.
Definitely. We really invite you, listening, to sit with this narrative. Think about what it means for you, for your own path, your own search for understanding or fulfillment. It's a story that really resonates even thousands of years later.